Someone asked me, do I still feel American after living abroad for 3 years? Kind of a loaded question and not one that's really easy to answer. After living abroad for 3 years, the short answer is no, I don't really feel fully American anymore. I don't think anyone can. I think if anyone is in this experience and does, they're probably not really opening their mind enough to the whole experience of living in a new place. But I really truly didn't expect it to be this severe, like this extent. I thought I would move here, I'd have the experience, but ultimately I would still feel like me. I would still see things in basically the same way. I would still be American inside, even though I might adapt a bit here and there when I'm in, British situations, or I'm at work, or I'm in conversation or something. And I would adapt and acclimatize to the way of life, but it wouldn't really penetrate. It wouldn't really seep brain and my soul as much as it has, at least. But somewhere along the journey, I did start to change the way I thought. I started to change the way I reacted to things. I started to find my perspective about living in America, my 4 decades of life there, just completely burst, basically. So now I'm kind of in this weird limbo flux space where I don't really feel fully American, but I'm definitely not fully British either. And I don't know that I'll ever be fully either, ever. Let's break this down a little bit so that I can, so you can understand exactly where I'm coming from. So I started to feel it in small moments. I was having less trouble understanding people's accents, even ones that weren't from my local town. I was realizing that when I did sit down to speak to British people, I was taking a lot more time to think through my reactions and my responses rather than just assuming I knew what they meant or assuming I knew what I was supposed to say. And my whole mindset on how I approached conversations, how I approached problems, how I approached parenting, how I approach my relationships, and how I approach life in general was completely converted into this new, slower, more deliberate and intentional, thoughtful way of looking at everything, especially those things that were most important to me in my life. It really starts quite subtly. I started to gain a bit more patience. I started to be able to step away from situations that I felt were toxic or something I didn't really want to give my energy to. I was able to create and participate in a slower pace of life than the constant hustle and bustle that I had living in America for so long. It's not that there isn't hustle and bustle here in the UK, but it's that they just know how to relax a little bit more. They know how to take time in between tasks, how to use a moment of coffee or tea or being in conversation with someone as a way to breathe and let go, rather than something you have to check off your to-do list, or just something that you grab or kind of take care of on your way somewhere else, which is a lot of the pace that happens in America. The other thing that I noticed is my reaction to stress is a lot more calculated. I slow down, I really listen and hear the other person, and I try to respond rather than waiting for my turn to talk. I am not going to say there's no stress living abroad. I mean, that's insane, right? Anyone who says that is lying to you. There's tons of stress living abroad. You have to worry about your visa. You have to worry about saying or doing the wrong thing, getting picked up by, the wrong person. People have to learn a new language, learn how to read a new language. There's so many little things, daily things that you do that you take for granted that become instinct when you completely take yourself out of your comfortable environment and you start over in a brand new environment. And it never really stops. You have to do it constantly throughout your day, every single day. So it's not that there's no stress, because you add that stress onto your normal things like parenting and being in a relationship or school or work or traffic or stuff that's happening in your local community or family. Of course, there's stress, but it's the way they handle stress. You take time. You take more time to just think things through, because people take more time to be in nature. They take time to tend to their gardens. They take time to walk their dog. They take time to drive to the countryside and have a picnic, or go visit a castle or a local historical monument. It takes you out of that daily hustle and bustle life, and it automatically slows you down. And with that slowing down comes a real calm and peace over your body that you don't even probably necessarily are conscious of. I am, because I'm paying more attention, because I'm trying to figure out how to live in this new life. But most people aren't aware of it. It's just something that they do here. It's instinct for them, because that's how they grew up and that's what they're used to. But I've noticed that just getting out into the greenery, and it doesn't even have to be far. And when you're in those moments, British people just tend to slow down and enjoy the atmosphere, enjoy the air, enjoy the sounds and the sights around you. And it just naturally calms you and brings you peace, I found anyway. And doing that reduces my stress level. I grew up in New Jersey, and if anyone who's been to New Jersey does notice that there are beautiful shorelines, there's gorgeous mountains in the north, and there is beautiful forests and stuff as well. But the bulk of New Jersey is made up of highways and shopping malls, and is extremely conducive to consumerism, being on the go, always having something to do. So even though you might have some of those spaces, that you have to be extremely intentional to go experience them. So for me personally, I found that going through those green spaces and taking that time into nature automatically brings that stress reduction and that peace to me, in a way that living in New Jersey and America never did for me. Next, I want to talk about the expectations that come with work-life balance. This one is a little bit tricky, because there are a lot of businesses and workplaces here in the UK that are adopting Americanized version of work hustle culture. The hours can be a little bit longer. They do, in some industries, expect you to work weekends. And they do have that, time for money perspective that most developed countries have nowadays. And coming from a very hustle and bustle culture, especially in the work culture, I was hoping that would be a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more calm. That part of it I didn't find very much. But I did find that there are very unique differences of living in the UK versus living in the United States. Number one, you get paid time off here. And that paid time off isn't something you negotiate in your contract like you do in America. You actually have federally mandated time off that the company has to give you as long as you're working full-time hours. That does not exist in the United States. Under any circumstances, you have to negotiate your time off. And most times you don't get more than 2 weeks. And maybe an extra week for sick time. But other than that, you don't get much other than weekends and holidays. The other expectation about work-life balance is it's a lot easier to actually take your time off here, and a lot easier to shut down when your hours are done, or when, it's the weekend or a holiday. In America, it's not illegal or anything like that, but it's definitely frowned upon by many managers for you to take your time off. And if you take more than a week at a time, that is almost unheard of. I told a story before, but I remember there was a time when I was coming back to England with my partner to visit, and we wanted to take 2 weeks at a time. And I got a lot of heat for it from my manager, because it's just not actually normally done. And I had to kind of do it through a holiday where we already had a couple days off. It was a huge ordeal. I had a checklist of things I had to make sure were done before I left. And I also remember getting a phone call on my way to the airport that asking if I could come in so that they could do like an evaluation that they had forgotten that they had to do. That was the deadline was when I was out. And I was like, no, I'm already gone. Too bad. But they have a lot of emphasis on just because you're not at work doesn't mean that you're not expected to be on the ball. So the expectations between work and life balance here in the UK are very, very different. They allow you to switch off when it's time to switch off most places. They also kind of force you to take your time off. Like if it's the middle of the year, you haven't had things scheduled yet, and you have a week or so left of your vacation, they make you take it. They hound you for it. I have been in that position as well, which is very strange because I never ever had all of my time off scheduled out because I was not used to having that much time off. So I never knew what to do. And coordinating it with school breaks and the partner's time off and everything, I just like forgot that I had the extra 2 weeks or so. It was very, very strange. But the expectations that come with your work are very, very different between the US and the UK. And that definitely started to penetrate, and it made me start to see, oh, I shouldn't have to hustle all the time. I shouldn't have to be on all the time. Like I deserve the time off to rest. And because I was taking it, as I said earlier, I was making better decisions. I was more intentional about, my conversations. I was more present in all of our family activities. So overall, it just contributed to a less stressful and more peaceful way of life. For those of you who don't know, I did move here with a child, and my partner is British, so he is full on back into British mode for the most part, which is a little bit of a communication issue with us because it's not what I'm used to. Our dynamic is changing, but overall, obviously a huge anchor for me and helps me out a lot with understanding like British tone and all that kind of stuff. And also the child is full on British now pretty much. So both of them are help to ground me and explain things to me. And especially because we lived in America together for so long, my partner understands where I'm coming from, and he has seen and picked up even some of the things that happen in the United States and the American way of life, and is able to kind of translate it for me, if you will, so that I can understand what's happening here in Britain really much better. And the child is really, really good at that too, is able to call out whether or not I'm being very American or something doesn't make sense. So I'm very, very grateful for having those anchors, and that helps me figure things out a little bit easier, which also relieves some stress. And it gives us the opportunity to kind of bond more as a family because we get to figure it out together. And it's always nice when you're going through a huge change like that, where you don't feel like you're the only one, and you have people to bounce things off of. It makes life a lot easier. I'll tell you that right now. A lot of people ask me if I'm ever going to go back to the US. And I don't think I could ever go back there to live. First of all, the political landscape and all of the turmoil and craziness that's happening politically and, foreign policy and lifestyle there would be difficult for us. But also our specific unique situation, my partner had a green card there. And when you don't return to the US on your green card within 6 months, it's very difficult to get back into the country, even on a holiday visa. So that would be tough. So we have that challenge on us specifically as well. But overall, I don't think we'd be able to live in the US now because we're just way too used to the slower, more comfortable pace of life and just don't want to have that hustle and bustle stress anymore. As far as visiting, I mean, it's really hard to say because on some days I really do want to visit it. There's tons of places I've not seen in the US. Obviously, I would love to see my niece and nephews again and hug them and all of that. But really, we don't have a lot of interactions and ties with a lot of friends and family from the US anymore. My daughter talks to a couple people that, she still keeps in touch with a few of her friends. But other than that, my partner and I don't really have any kind of relationship left with most of the people we were, had relationships with and involved in their lives back in the US. So when we talk about going to the US, we get excited about it, but we don't really get excited about visiting our old life. We get excited about visiting very specific people, eating some of the food that it's hard to get here in the UK, and seeing things that we hadn't seen before. But I think for me personally, I've landed on, other than being able to see my niece and nephew and maybe having a good slice of pizza, I would much rather just go somewhere in Europe I haven't been, as far as visiting or vacationing is concerned. So I guess, do I still feel American after being in the UK for 3 years? I mean, yes and no. I feel like I'm always a little bit out of place, and I feel like that's always gonna be. I don't feel like that's ever really gonna go away. It feels like I'm gonna constantly be in limbo, probably for the rest of my life. If I'm lucky enough to stay here for another couple years and get indefinite leave to remain. If I'm able to get indefinite leave and stay here for long term, which is basically the equivalent of a green card that my partner had in the US, it would be great. I mean, I would love to stay here for as long as possible. And I don't think my partner would have the option to live in the US again. At least it would be a huge, huge struggle. We made that decision and we knew that that was a factor when making the decision to move here. I think that I'm just always going to be American, but I think I'm just going to become more British as time goes on. Not necessarily, I'll never be fully British, obviously, because I spent 4 decades of my life in the United States. But I think it's going to be something that grow into a little bit more over time. It's probably the better way to put it. And I'm probably going to feel out of place here in the UK, no matter how long I stay here. But I also think that if I do ever go back to the United States eventually, even just to visit, that I'll probably end up feeling out of place there as well. So that's really what it's like to live as an American in the UK, especially if you've been here for a few years and your intention is to stay as long as possible, as is our intention. You just don't ever fully belong anywhere, do you? And the biggest way I've changed is accepting that I'm not going to ever fully belong and that I'm not going to ever fully be American again either. But that it's okay. That it's okay to live in limbo. It's okay to just kind of go with the flow and figure it out as you go. Coming from America, my unique experience, that's not how it goes. You have a plan laid out in front of you and you follow it. And if you deviate from it, then you're looked at really like they're strange. And why would you not want to be part of the system? And are you crazy because somebody else might be doing it better? You know, that whole American exceptionalism thing. So it is an adjustment by far, but it's an adjustment I'm embracing, and I'm hoping that will turn out to be positive than negative. And if the last 3 years are any indication of that, then yeah, I am definitely on the right path. I didn't lose my Americanism, and I probably never will, but it's definitely not the whole story anymore.